everyone. We are live on the Frugal Crafters YouTube channel. I'm Lindsay, the Frugal Crafter, and in the studio with me today is Sarah.
Hi!
And Sarah will be relaying your questions to me as we paint along today. We are going to be painting this Cardinal. I got to adjust my monitor. I can't see it very well. There we go. And we're going to be using velour paper, mainly because my microphone is sitting on my desk, and if I use regular paper, the pastels will sound kind of scratchy, and I know that bugs some people, so I wanted to be kind to your ears. But I also did another Cardinal on like a more typical pastel paper. This is the Hahnemühle Ingres. Used to be the Fabriano Ingers, I think that's how you pronounce it. So if you have this paper or Can't Send Me Tints, this is a similar kind of look you're going to get. It's just a little bit crisper. And then on the velour, you just get a kind of a softer look with a little more depth, which I think is really pretty personally, but you can use whatever you like. It doesn't matter. You can also use whatever pastels you like. On my blog, I have a little color chart here, and since pastels are opaque, all you have to do is just grab your set of pastels, hold the colors up, and you can match them that way, and then I recommend just putting them out on your work surface as you're working. So if you're watching this live right now, you might just want to hang out and chat with friends in the chat, but if you're watching the replay and you want to paint along, I do recommend that you put everything out before you begin, because it makes it a little bit easier to follow along. That way you won't have to pause and everything. And if you don't have any supplies, I did link up the kind of the basics that you would need to do pastels, and I have a new online course. It's Soft Pastels for Beginners, and I just put that basic list on my blog post today, so you could either pull what you have from your own stash, or you could just kind of get an inexpensive set to get you started. Do we have any questions yet?
Not so far.
Okay, wonderful. So we're going to start off. I'm just using a very pale gray velour paper. It's about the color of cardboard. You can see it's taped down to a piece of cardboard there. And we're going to sketch on using a pastel pencil. And these are just like colored pencils, but they have chalk in them instead of like a waxy lead. You could also use a hard pastel, like one of these new pastels, something that's not too soft. Velour paper is not very erasable, so I just want to mention that. So when you're sketching, you might want to keep your lines a little bit inward, like make your bird a little skinnier than you think you want him to be. So this is kind of the line for the back, going down the tail. This is the belly. We're going to do kind of like a teardrop shape for the belly. And we're going to bring it around. Oh, there's a special discount link in the video description, or if you're watching this off of YouTube, the coupon code is COLOR, and that will get you 50% off your the pastel class for the month of February. So it's a launch month special that I do for all my followers, so feel free to take advantage of that and save half. It's regular $79. You'll get it for $39.50. You get the wing in here. See, it's kind of like a triangle shape. So we've got a line, we've got a semicircle, we've got a triangle, we've got a triangle. So nothing too tricky here. There is some foreshortening on the beak. Now, when I'm done the stream, I'm going to be good and go link up my reference photos. I swear that is my Achilles heel. I always forget the reference photos, but I'm going to show you what they are. They're both from Unsplash. You could search them if you want to find them before I link them up. This is the one I'm doing for our project today. This is the one I did on the other paper. I was looking at both of them, but I kind of like the coloring on this guy better. And this is just printed off on cheap copy paper. But you can see the foreshortening on the beak is kind of tricky. So if you want to turn his head a little bit and have the beak kind of coming out like a triangle, you certainly can do that. Do whatever is more comfortable for you. And you could use transfer paper. I'm not sure how transfer paper would work on the velour, but you could use transfer paper or graphite paper and trace the photo if you are concerned about your drawing. So I'm going to get the top beak first, because that is definitely like a triangle. It's overlapping the face. It's not protruding beyond it. And then underneath, and he looks so grumpy, you've got kind of like a parallelogram.
They do look grumpy. We have a pair that come to our bird feeders.
Oh, yeah. I rarely get them.
But we have a male and female, and sometimes they just both look grumpy. One day I was sitting on the couch in the morning. It was cold, so it was a little later. I hadn't put the bird feeders out yet, and they hopped on the porch railing in the front window and were just kind of looking in through the window at me. It was like, okay, all right, I'll come out and feed you.
They
I
were
was like,
ready.
okay.
Yeah, Jason said you had a deer at your feeders.
Yeah,
one
that's why
night.
we bring them in at night. We get deer. We've had porcupines, skunks, and raccoons that will come to the feeder and scrounge around. And so that's why we bring our bird feeders in at night. Penny Cormier, which side of the Me Tints paper do we use? One side is toothier.
I prefer the rougher side, but I like that it's double-sided because if you just want to use pastel pencils, for instance, you could use a smoother side and it would you'd be able to finish a painting in a reasonable amount of time, whereas if you use pastel pencils on the rough side, it would just take you longer to fill it in. I also like to use colored pencils on the smooth side, but generally for pastel, you want the rougher side so that it will hold more media. I like the texture of their paper too. It's kind of like a honeycomb kind of texture versus like the lines of the ingress, which you probably can make out. Maybe if I show you somewhere where I've got a little scumbling there. This has a very linear pattern to it on its rougher side, and the Cancer Me Tints is more of like a honeycomb pattern, which is, they're both fine. You don't really see once you've gotten it covered with pastel, but if you do have bits showing, I like to have a nice texture. I'm going to fatten up this part of the tail. Okay, now here's a trick. When you're doing birds, it's easier to sketch the bird before you sketch the support. So if your bird is sitting on a branch, I like to do the bird first because it's easier to make a branch match the bird, and our reference photo does not have a branch, so we're kind of fudging it. I'm looking at the other reference photo to get my branches. And that's why it's a nice idea to have a few reference photos to go by, because you might want to do something a little bit differently, and you still might want something to go by as far as like I love this. Both of these birds are in the snow, so the coloring is very similar, and then I can take like some of the background from the other bird picture and add it to this so that I get a little bit more interest. I'm using a hard pastel so I don't lay down too much, because I know this is nearly impossible to erase on, so I don't want to go overboard. And I'm just putting in just some little branches. Very, very lightly though. And in the background, I'm just using barely any pressure and just kind of like scribbling in almost like some pattern or veining. It's far away branches, but think of it like you're doing veining, like you're painting a table and you want it to look like marble, and you're just doing some light veining, like a decorative technique. I also want to get the background in before I do too much to the bird, because I like to pull the background into the bird area. Then when I paint the bird, which is my subject, I can overlap, and then I won't have a halo of unpainted paper around him.
Becky Quick, if you sign up for the pastel class, when you do any pastel tutorials, do you add those to the class, or is it the patron that see your new pastel videos? I'm assuming she means the person who signed up. Oh no, the courses. Sometimes I add extra things to my courses, like down the road, especially if I think there's a new technique or new supply that ought to be highlighted. So for the pastel class, everything is already contained in there. You've got your basic, like this is how to apply a pastel. Here's 6 different ways you put the pastel on paper. Here's 6 different ways you blend the pastels. Kind of going over like that. And then there are 4 finished pastel tutorials, and those are already there. They're ready for you to enjoy as soon as you sign up. I think the other thing she was talking about is Critique Club, and that is where you can submit any work you're currently working on. You can submit a painting or 2 a month where you're trying to figure out how to paint this or that. You just want an in-depth critique of your work, and I put a couple of my Sketchbook Sunday videos in real time, narrated real time in there, so you can see the stuff I'm struggling with and I'm doing to grow as an artist. So they're kind of like a little bit of more of a high level painting lesson, maybe some abstract concepts, higher concepts than you could really get across in a short YouTube video. So that's in Critique Club. There's 2 tutorials like that a month in Critique Club. But the pastel course is all encapsulated already, and it's all there available for you. I'll probably add an archive of older pastel tutorials so that you can find them easily. But yeah, it's all there already, and all the pastel tutorials that are on my YouTube channel are going to stay on my YouTube channel. They're not going to be pulled and put in that class. It's all new content.
Hope that answered the question.
Ian Jackson, do you call that hard pastel a Conte crayon?
This is a new pastel by Prismacolor, but Conte crayons are about the same hardnesses as this. Conte is a brand, new pastel is a brand. I'm using a really pale green. I'm just very gently, like just brushing the background with this color. I want to get a little bit of color and texture. I'm going to do the same with this very pale blue. It's a little bit darker. Let's see what this one looks like. This one's a little bit lighter. I like that darker color though. But I want to take the wrapper off this because I don't want to have skinny marks. I want to have longer marks. So I'm just going to take a knife and cut the wrapper off. That's the other reason that, like, in my course I talked about matching colors, because you lose your wrappers when you're working with pastel, and you might not say, well, this is ultramarine tint 1, you know, and you might be like, I've lost that wrapper years ago, I'm never gonna know what that color is. Then you match it by eye because they're opaque and they're dry media. A little smaller. What you see is what you get. So you can trust your eyes here. You can actually hold your pastel up against something you're trying to paint and match it that way if you want. So I'm just using the flat edge to very lightly brush on some color here. And this will also give a really nice contrast to the orangey tones that are in the bird, because blue and orange are opposite colors, so it'll help that stand out a little bit better.
Tammy Newman, can you wear latex gloves to blend? I love the results of pastels, but hate the feeling of them.
You can. If latex doesn't bother you, go right ahead.
Amy Wazwaz, do pastels have oil in them, or is there more than one kind, oil pastels and pastel?
There's more than one kind. These are soft pastel. Think soft pastel equals a chalky feeling pastel. Now they're not hard chalks like you would work on a chalkboard or sidewalk chalks. They're more of a clay in them than like a chalky chalk, but they feel like chalk. So that's how you can kind of tell the difference. I'm going to give a little bit of sap green in there too, just to kind of maybe give the hint maybe there's some evergreen boughs around. But it's all very soft because I don't want it to be in the focus. The only thing in focus will be the bird and the branch that he's perched on and some of the snow. So you can see if I rub this with my finger, that's not really going anywhere. So that's the beauty of the velour paper. So if you're at home and you're using oil pastels, this would be very similar, except you wouldn't be able to lay down color in a really soft, like really with a light touch here, but when we get to painting the bird, it's going to be very similar to an oil pastel technique. So you could use either. Just your background would be a little bit different. I like to work on toned paper because it takes a lot of the work out of the painting. Like if you decide you just want to do the focal point and not mess with the background, having a toned background really can help. Same thing with colored pencil. It just takes a lot of the need to fill in away. This paper is by Hahnemühle. I have seen it on Amazon, and most of the big art supply stores should have it. And probably available in large sheets in like if you go into an art supply store that's like not a craft store but more of a art supply store.
Carol Green, how do you preserve your finished art?
Well, I do go over storing and caring for your art in the course, but generally, like this isn't going to need fixative because the velour grabs the pastel so much. I just put a piece of like glassine over it and tape it to the back. I'll use fixative if I have to, but I generally don't like to use fixative, so I don't that much. And I'm going to take some of this, actually I'm going to use this brown here. It's a reddish brown, and I am just very gently going to put a few branches. I don't want too many, just some really light ones. Very, very, very light, broken. Want the background really loose so you can really appreciate the detail that we're going to do on the bird. And if something feels a little too harsh, I can blend it a little bit, but not too much. Like that line's pretty harsh, so I got to repeat that somewhere else or it's going to kind of stick out. So I'm going to do another piece over there. Just do a couple more so it doesn't feel so out of place. Okay. So now we're going to work on the bird, and I'm going to be blocking in color, and I will be kind of jumping around a bit. I'm going to start off with kind of like a bright orangey red, and I'm going to throw that in wherever I see that it's the brightest. I'm going to be careful around the head because it can grow way bigger than it needs to be if you're not careful as you're pulling out the feathers. You don't need a lot of pressure. This is a Schmincke Pastel. This is my favorite brand of pastel. It is a little pricey and it's gotten more expensive since I bought mine. I am looking, I've ordered some of the Mungio handmade pastels to see if they're similar in quality because they're a lot less expensive. So hopefully when those come in I can do a review on them here on the channel and you can see if it's something that would suit your needs.
JPC13 Art, when you do decide to use a fixative, is there a brand you prefer that has the least color shift?
Well, fixative is going to make your colors more translucent, so that's why it makes your whites disappear. I don't have a ton of experience with fixative, but the one that I use, and I just keep using it because I don't need very much, so that's what I buy when I run out, is Krylon Workable. And you can find that in I think any craft store even would have that. Or any art supply store, Amazon. I did link up to it in the supply list because they do have it on Amazon. I would just buy it one at a time. You can get like a big pack of it, but it's actually more expensive to buy it in the big pack than it is just to buy one bottle of it anyway. And I don't think you're going to go through it that quick unless you're teaching a class or something like that. But that's what I use. If anybody else has any recommendations they want to share in the chat, please do, because I use it so infrequently. That's pretty much all I use.
We've got Eve, we've got Gail, we've got Dawn, we've got Joe, we've got a liquid color.
Oh, great!
We've got all of our. We've got Grace. So we've got a lot of.
The gang is here. The gang's all here. It's
yes.
great.
And Val, I don't want to forget Val.
Oh, nice.
We've got some experience here. People may be able to give some tips or tricks or what they like to use.
Excellent. Oh, another brand of pastel I really like, and I just got a little try it pack that came in a Smart Art box, and that is the Sennelier pastels. They're you can actually feel how they're much lighter in feeling, so it's probably not as much actual media in this versus a Schmincke, but they're so buttery soft that they just release the color so well. You'll notice that like your harder pastels will be a little bit heavier because they're compacted more with more binder, so you're actually getting more with those pastels, and they last longer because they don't leave so much on the paper when you're coloring with them, but they'll have their own uses. I'm using this nice bright red pastel I'm actually kind of blending into some of those other colors just by overlapping them, and that's how you do it with the oil pastel. I don't use oil pastels much. I'm not an expert with those or anything, but you do need a little more pressure, and you need a lot more on there to blend when you're using the oil pastel. Such a pretty color. How many people do we have hanging out today?
We have 263.
Nice. I was kind of worried that nobody would remember about live streams,
No. Everybody's excited.
Like, we've moved on, Lindsay. We're playing Fortnite now. I don't know.
I don't know about Fortnite for everybody.
It's very popular.
That's what I hear. I don't play video games.
I don't either. I went back in with the orange and blending it into some of those reds that I put in there. Make sure when you're applying your pastel that you go, even though you can blend it, go with the contour of the body. So like pretend that each little stroke is a feather and it would be going in that direction. That way you'll end up with kind of a richness and a texture, and you won't have to go back in and keep fussing with it with a pastel pencil later, because everything will be built up in that direction. Okay, hopefully this red is showing up as different tones and it's not just one big red mass. Red can be difficult to film. I'm going to go in with this really deep kind of burgundy color. It's almost like a brick. And I'm going to go and add some shadows here. I don't want to go in with grays or browns yet because it's easier to mute down a color than it is to make it vibrant again.
Pokey, are these pastels water soluble?
Yes. Pretty much any of your chalk soft pastels will dilute with water. Which is a great background technique, especially if you're working on like watercolor paper. Oh, and if you have any like crappy watercolor paper, guys, like you got started and you bought something at the grocery store to get you started and you realize that it just pills like crazy when you use it with watercolor, perfect for pastel because pastel does not have to have that sizing in it like watercolor paper does. So it's great. Just use up that old watercolor paper. It will work beautifully for pastel. I'm getting this line here in the breast of the bird. You see a little shadow in there. That's with this kind of bricky red pastel. And I'm just making sure that I'm using kind of choppy short strokes to put these darker feathers in that are kind of on the side of the belly under the wing so that I build that texture with every stroke. A little bit more up here. When I'm doing this initial layer, I try not to go too heavy with any pastel in case I need to go in and adjust with other colors. Now I'm going to go in with this brown, and this was one of the browns I used for the branches in the background because I like to recycle my colors as much as possible, and that gives us some nice harmony in the work. And I'm going to go in here on the back where we have that more brown tone and add it in. Now if you ever feel like the pastel is dull and you can't get a nice edge, you can either go into the pastel pencil or a harder pastel, or I recommend breaking the pastel and using a sharp edge rather than trying to sharpen it with a knife or on sandpaper, just because you waste so much and these can get expensive, and plus you're adding all that dust into the air if you're trying to like shave it down on sandpaper, like a lot of it. But it's more just like you'd be wasting it. And once you get into like more of an artist grade pastel, buying them by the stick, they do get a lot more pricey. I went a little dark there, but I'm going to layer up other colors, so I'm not too worried about it. I want to get the edges of some of these leaves, not leaves, feathers, in here. And when you're doing like a really robust stroke like that, a really gestural stroke, try not to go back in and fuss with it. Try to just leave it because that'll give you a much more realistic look when it's all done. Even though it looks kind of sloppy now, it'll be much better when it's all done. You got to go through the hot mess stage of the painting. It's not going to look good till you're just about done. Now I want to put the little feet in here, so I'm going to put 3 little toes there and 3 little toes there. Just with this chunky one, I can go in with a pencil later and refine it. Can't really see the back of the branch, because if you look at this guy, he's kind of like on like looks like a iron rail or something, and we're seeing it right from the edge, so I'm really seeing the front. So I kind of look over at this guy and I can see he's got 2 little feet right there. Just kind of looking at both of those to get my reference is where the feet will be. Plus I painted a lot of birds in the past, so got a good idea of where they're going to end up. And I will just grab a pencil and sketch them in. These are the Van Gogh pastel pencils, and I really like them, but they don't make them anymore. I don't think, and they don't make them in the US anymore. I think you might be able to get them in Europe. And I think their colored pencils are still available in Europe.
Pat Sizakis, apologize, I probably said that wrong. I inherited a set of 30 Schminke Kunstler Pastel Farbenben soft asters, I'm assuming pastels, and a set of 15 Caran d'Ache Neo Art Aquarelle wax pastels. Explain the difference and uses for each.
Sure. Well, your Schmincke pastels are probably like these super soft chalk pastels. And the Caran d'Ache, did you say the watercolor, water-soluble pastels?
She said the aquarelle wax pastels.
Okay, those are like the watercolor crayons. Those would dilute with water, but they would give you a waxy finish. So like you'd want to use those on watercolor paper. You'd want to use quite a bit of water with them because they're not going to be as soft to color with. But they would be they're really nice. You can do some beautiful work with them. I have a big set of the Neocolor 2s, and I like them a lot. I'm twisting and dragging my pastel as I go to give me some nice branch textures, and take some right off the edge. By twisting, when you drag, you get all those weird edges of the pastel, and it just gives you more of a barky texture. I'm going to go in with a little bit of yellow ochre. Actually, I want to do some yellow ochre on the bird first because I want to have it in a few different places, and it's such a nice color to work with.
Pokey, what do you think of Faber-Castell's Soft Pastels Creative Studio?
Oh, that's what I recommend actually for the beginners because it's a good quality. I like the 72 half stick. They perform excellent. They're probably not very light fast, but honestly, I've never really had a problem with any pastels fading that I've worked with. They're a great choice. They're non-toxic, I do believe, and they're a student grade pastel, but they're wonderful. I definitely would recommend. Faber-Castell does really good products also. I'm adding a little bit of shadow. This is kind of a charcoal gray. This is a student grade pastel. I'll mix and match them.
Crazy artist, Lindsay. Mixing and matching.
Well, pigments like black, brown, earth tones, they're generally not going to be fugitive because the material is so cheap to make those.
Inexpensive.
Right. They don't inexpensive. They don't need to go buy those really expensive pigments like the cobalts and they usually don't use cobalt in pastel just because of the dust. You could inhale it, but it's not, like ultramarine or one of those more expensive colors. I just block that in with that gray, and I want to add a little bit of highlight. I'm going to use this. I've got very pale. This is a Payne's Gray Tint 1, but it's just a very light gray. I'm just dragging it over there to give it a little bit of texture and highlight. I will be putting snow on here, so don't want to lighten it up too much. Oh, I forgot to put the yellow ochre on there. I'll do that too. Just a little bit. You can actually do a little bit of this kind of seafoamy green color if you want to add lichen. Oh, I love that. That's so pretty. Such a pretty color. It's so nice next to the red too, because green and red are opposites. And you can just stomp down some color anywhere you want. If you feel like you want a little splash of this or that, it will it'll make the painting a little bit more fun and vibrant. Let's see, I need a black pastel pencil. So now I'm just going to go in here and get this little black mask kind of put in. Now when you get to the edges of a dark color like this, you want to kind of flick out a little bit of feathering so that you get that texture, because you can't paint every little feather, especially with pastels. They're going to be kind of chunky and thick, so you just need a few little details here and there to show the texture of what you're painting, especially on this pastel velour paper, which is just a very soft look anyway because of all the little furry flockiness of it. And before I get that too clogged, I want to just suggest an eye. And I can always mute down the highlight later if I think it's too much. But it can be hard to get that white to stick and from a pencil because it's so hard in the future. So I like to get it in there anyway. I can always change it later. I also like to do the beak with a pencil just because it's such a small area. I'm going in here with this kind of orangey color. I do want to get a little bit of this color that I used in a pastel there too, so I'm just going to throw a little bit there in the middle, maybe a little bit on the bottom too. And I've got this pretty peach. This would be nice as a highlight. You know, where I don't need to direct it too much, I can just splash it on there. And I want to add some of this and some of the highlight in the feathers as well. So I might as well do it while I have it. And you can flick out little bits, you know, when you're getting, as you're building up your layers, because you don't want to overwork it. So once you see that an area is just about done, you can go ahead and flick out those little feathers, because you can't detail every little thing. You know, in a pastel painting you're doing in an hour, you want to make every stroke count. And like I went right next to the yellow ochre and overlapped some of it, so I still keep those distinct colors because they're so pretty. The next thing, I'm still going to work on the beak. I'm going to try merging that a little bit with my finger. I don't think it's going to be too successful. And I feel like I want a little bit more orange. Maybe just a little smidgen of this red. Okay, now I'm going to go back in with my pastel pencils. The pastel pencils that I recommend, because you're not going to need a ton, is it's just a little set of 12. You can probably find it in any craft store. Amazon has it for about $12. It's a set of General's pastel chalks. It's called multi-pastel chalks. I think they actually are available in sets up to 36. But the little set of 12 is really excellent. You've got a nice variety. You don't need 25 purples. You just need like one purple that you can like crisp up an edge on a blueberry or a grape or something. You don't need to have a ton of colors. I mean, it's nice, you know, if you want to, go for it, but you know, the set of 12 is going to take you so far. And that's what I recommend, because they do work really well. I have a set of Derwents, and those were expensive. I have a set of 24 of those, and I've never been happy with the amount that they blend, which is a bummer, because they have, you know, nice thick leads, and, you know, they were expensive, but I honestly like the little General cheapo multi-pastels a lot better. I really like the Van Gogh. If you have those, then great. Or if you can find them, that's wonderful, but I haven't seen them for sale in years.
Moe's FR, do you recommend the Mugno pastels for beginners?
You know, I'm kind of betting they probably do make actually the Faber-Castell ones, because they make a lot of products for different companies. And if that's the case, or if they make the SEI, which I know they make the SEI brand and a lot of their other products, the SEI brand is really good too. So I'm betting they're probably excellent. I've just personally haven't used them, so I hate to recommend, even though they're pretty inexpensive. I think they're about $8 for a set of 36 half sticks. Since I haven't used them, I'm just a little shy about recommending them, but they're probably good because their other products have been really good. I'm trying their more expensive handmade ones. I've ordered them and they haven't arrived yet. But I will do a review on them when they come. Hopefully they're really good. With the beak, you just want to be careful not to overwork it, but you got to have enough definition there to make it, you know, look like the beak. I'm blending with this white pencil. I'm just working over it with a little bit of firmness, and on this velour paper, it's just enough to smudge the layers underneath and mix with them. You probably wouldn't need this much working on a paper. I'll just show you again. And I will link up these birds, the photographs. You can see how much crisper the lines are. I mean, you don't need to work in as much on the paper because it has more bite. So this is rough, almost not like sandpaper, but if you consider like what would happen if you took a stick of charcoal and you ran it across a piece of fabric, or you ran it across a piece of sandpaper, the sandpaper would grab so much more and give you a nice hard crisp line, and the fabric would give you a soft line. That's kind of what we got going on here. So if you see me really working something and you're like, why is she pushing that so much? It's, you know, it doesn't need that much. It's just it's the texture of this velour paper.
Ian Jackson, what would be the best size set for you, Lindsay? I'm assuming size set of pastels.
To start off, I really recommend that set of 72 half sticks from Faber-Castell, or, SEI, or I'm trying to think of other brands that I've used personally. Royal and Langnickel's pastels aren't bad, but I haven't seen any sets over 36. But I would love to get, recommend a set of 48 or higher of, just a basic student grade, decent quality pastel. And then as you use them up, or as you realize, oh, I wish I had a peach, or I wish I had like a lighter pale gray, then just kind of add on as you need, or bring your little nubs into the store as you use them up and replace them with a higher quality pastel as you go. But, because it's a dry medium and there's only so much mixing you're doing, having more colors is a little bit, is quite helpful. I mean, like this pastel, this came from some random, like, no-name art set that I'm like, oh, this is actually a decent pastel. Okay, into the box it goes. It was like in this random box of supplies that were my kids, and they weren't really interested. They pretty much use my supplies now. They don't really keep any of their own supplies. They just go and use my supplies when they need them. Very gently adding this white Schmincke pastel onto the beak. This is like the softest white pastel, or their pastels are the softest I've ever tried. They're so wonderful. I'd recommend just a white, even if you have no desire to buy any others. If you could just get your hands on a white, it will be so handy for your highlights. I'm actually just tapping it in there, and I'm going to blend it with a pencil.
Moe's Athar, have you noticed that the Prima and Mungyo watercolors are similar?
Yeah, they're like the same. I think Mungyo makes a lot of kind of student craft grade products, and they're really good ones. They're excellent. Now, if you are going to, also if you have some Conte pencils, like from an art kit or something, this pencil sharpener's not going to work in it. It's too big. The Conte pencils, those work just the same as pastel pencils. Conte's a brand name, but the pencils they're like a chalk pastel pencil. They may have a little bit more, a little bit of wax in it just to help bind them, but that's it. And try to get in the habit of turning your sharpener, not your pencil, to sharpen so you don't damage the core there. Still fussing with the beak. Okay. I keep misplacing my black pencil. There we go.
Pat Zizakis, where can you buy just individual chalk pastels to add to what I have?
An art store should have that. Like, maybe not your craft store. I'm not sure if the big box craft stores have them. Do you remember if Michael's has? We don't have a Michael's around here, but do you know if they sell them?
I think craft stores for the most part just carry it in kits. Jerry's.
Yes, you can buy them, but often you have to buy them in boxes of 3 of the same color.
Oh, okay. All right.
Like my sister's art store they had a display of individual pastels. If you can find any smaller art store, they probably will have like a setup of pastels by the stick.
Yeah, because I know when I went to the art store down in Portland, they had a section of different types of pastels. You could buy individual sticks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it's those small local stores. Sometimes you can order, like if you're ordering them, say you're ordering 3 pastels, they'll let you assort them. Maybe Jerry's does that. I know those pastels I was looking at they were in boxes of 3. But I would just check around if you can assort them so that you don't have to buy 3 of the same color. Because I know for paper you don't have to buy 10 of the same color. You just need to buy 10 sheets so they can justify shipping it to you. It's nice if you can see it in person though. But I would say pretty much any non-chain art store would have that. And even like Blick, if you have a Blick in your area or a Jerry's in your area, I'm sure they sell them open stock. I'm just dragging out some of those feathers with the black. Adding some detail to the wings. I'm going to add some detail to the wings with this pale Payne's Gray. Remember we use that to highlight our branches. I got a nice flat edge there I'm gonna use. And I'm not gonna fuss with it. You get what you get and you don't get upset here. You throw in a couple lines for those wings and you call it a day. And some really short ones up here. And then just a little bit of fluff. In fact, maybe I'll do that with a pencil because...
Val is saying that Michaels does not sell the open stock pastels.
Oh, that's too bad. I don't think AC Moore does. They have open stock markers.
Oh, and the place in Portland, Artists and Craftsmen, which is where I think I went, got you the tubes of watercolor.
Oh, yeah.
Joe Maskey and Conte is negligible enough to be compatible with other pastels.
Yeah, you're using them for the underpainting. It's not going to put so much down that it's going to bother anything. It's like just enough wax to bind the stick together firmly. So yeah, you wouldn't run into trouble with that. All right, I'm going to go in with a red pastel pencil on the undercarriage here and pick out some little feathers. And I'm also going to use that here just because they kind of just have a little bit of glow of red on the edge of the feathers there, but not a lot. So I just wanted to get that in there. The pencils are so nice because you can add a little bit of texture and you can add these little like glimmers of color without like messing stuff up. I am going to use a sandpaper block here to clean this pastel pencil because I've been using it for blending, so it's gotten pretty dirty. But I don't really need to sharpen it because I still have plenty of lead there, so I'm just going to clean it. So that's what these things are. If you've ever got these in an art kit before, they're for cleaning your blending stumps. They're for cleaning or pointing your pencils so you don't have to sharpen them. And you can use regular old fine sandpaper. You don't need to have that. It's probably about like 220. Just want to throw in a few indications of fluff. Probably even wipe them off on a paper towel too. You can also use a firm pastel pencil and scrape away. Like if you have a light over dark, you can go in and scrape away some of the lighter pastel. I love this red. Smaller strokes. As you're layering it up, every stroke should be a little smaller, unless you're doing like a big gesture line. Because you don't want to cover. You want to be adding kind of like smaller details, not covering up what you've already put.
We've had several of the same question.
Sure.
When you're done with your pastel pieces, you store them flat with a layer of glassine paper over them until you are ready to mat and frame.
Yes.
You do not use a fixative.
Not unless I have to, and usually not at the end. It's usually before my final highlights. And I do go all over how to cut a specialty mat for pastel because you need like a space between your mat and your work so that dust can fall away. And I go over fixing and how to properly use it and all that stuff in the course if anybody needs a little extra information on that.
We had 2 or 3 people ask that same question.
Yep.
So rather than me retyping it each time, I thought we'd just review it again.
Yeah.
And then if it comes up again, we'll refer people to back through a couple times in the video. We've gone over it. So
yeah, I don't like using fixative. I'm using the edge of this white pastel. I'm going to do the highlights on the snow that's going to be on the branches. So it's going to look like the snow is kind of hovering over the branch because I'm going to throw some other colors in there. Put a little bit here. And because this pastel is so soft, it's softer than anything underneath, it's letting me lay it right on top.
Wolf Shadow, are pastel pencils as good as the sticks? I'm thinking about getting less dust and having more control.
Pastel pencils are as good. I usually use them in kind of your lower layers because they will, they're harder. They don't put down quite as much. And they're also really good for details. I actually addressed the whole the whole mess problem in the course. There's a product called Pan Pastel, and I don't have any upstairs in my office right now, but they're like cakes. Actually, I'll show you these. You can envision these. They're bigger cakes. This is a Jane Davenport palette pastels. I haven't used these as far as like a complete painting, but pan pastels are kind of like this, but they're big cakes of powdery pastel. So you would use them with an applicator, and you put them on your painting that way. So you do that with like applicators like this. Well, actually, let's try it. Why not? I haven't tried these in a painting. So like you would pick up your color, and then you would go and you would, hey, these aren't too bad actually on a painting. And then you would go and apply them with this like you would a paintbrush. You could use pastel pencils with it, and your hands would be completely clean. So so there's an option for you to keep your hands clean. But I would use a smoother paper with if you're good to just do if you're just going to do pastel pencils, I would use a smoother paper so it doesn't take you forever to fill up. And yeah, maybe work a little bit smaller so you don't chew through your pastel pencils too quickly if you're just using them. I'm using some of that lighter green for the snow underneath the brightest snow. And I'm also going to use that for some snow on some of these branches far away. I'm just kind of scribbling in some splotches.
Pat Sizakis, how long do we have to sign up for class using the discount?
To the end of the month. It's a launch month special for subscribers. Or regular viewers. You don't have to. I know not everybody likes to log into things, so it's already any viewers. It's over on the last day of the month. I'm adding some of this really pale blue just to give a little pops of color in the bottom of the snow and a little bit in the background to give the feeling of far away snow and light reflecting off the snow. If you're not watching this directly on YouTube, the coupon code is COLOR if you go to lindsayweirich.teachable.com for the new pastel class. I'm going to add a little bit of this lovely green here and there. And I want to use some of that gray. Let's see, that was this really pale, oh, here it is. I can use both of these actually. I got this really pale blue. That's a nice far away snow on branch color. So see, I'm just kind of like adding it here and there. You might not even see branches. You might just see like little clumps of snow. You just want to build that depth. Very little pressure just to give an appearance of snow far away. And I can add some of this Payne's Gray onto my clumps of snow. A little shadow.
Yells, is there a promo video? I'm assuming they mean for your class.
Right on the sale page. I'm actually going to be posting it to YouTube too, but it's right on this. If you click the link in the video description, it'll take you to more information about the class, and you can watch a promo video there. My husband edited that.
He does such a good job.
He does. It's like when somebody else makes you a sandwich tastes better. When somebody else edits your promo video, it just looks so much better.
Like when John makes me breakfast, it's delicious. I mean, I made myself breakfast this morning, and it was fine, but it just isn't as tasty.
Not as good, no, yeah.
When somebody else makes it for you.
Okay. Now I'm doing a little stippling here on the tops of some of these like closer snow drifts or snow on the branches to give it that light, fluffy, powdery texture. And I'm just gonna tip this up, take one last look at this bird here. And don't blow your pastel dust. Always just tap it onto your paper or into a trash can. Put newspaper down on your table before you work, and that's a great way to catch all that stuff. Then you can either throw your newspaper away. You can still recycle it with the pastel dust on it. That's not going to hurt anything. I'm gonna see if I can sneak a little highlight in there with this really soft pastel. Yep, that's good. And now I just want to put some falling snow because I feel like I have enough detail here, and I'm just going to add some little snowflakes. Oh, something I want to mention. When you go on top of the bird, you might pick up some red, so you might want to do the snowflakes on the bird last. And you can smudge the ones out that are further away so that it gives you a little bit of focus. Like if you use less pressure, you get further away. Or it could even be further to the viewer snowflakes, but it's just not in the same plane as the bird, so it gives you more of a depth. And oh, I need a little highlight on the feet because they did kind of merge into the branch a little bit. And a little shadow with a pencil next to the highlight. And there we have it. There is our finished painting. Do we have any other questions before we go?
We're all caught up.
All right, wonderful. There is a supply list on my blog. There's the color chart so you can match up the pastels you have to what I used here today so you can follow along. And I will link up that reference photo on both my blog and in the YouTube video description. All of the links on my blog post and in the video description should take you to the discounted price. But if it doesn't show up as discounted, then use the coupon code COLOR when you check out. If you want to try my new course, Soft Pastels for Beginners, you do get lifetime access. So you can return to it in the future if you forget something. There's the picture I did before on the velour paper. Here is the one on the Canson Ingrace paper, so you can see kind of the different looks that you can expect depending on what you're using. And I think that's it. Do you have anything to add, Sarah?
I don't.
All right, it was great hanging out with you guys all again today. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, happy crafting.